in today's CBSE in-house training session 2022-23. I, Rajiv Kumar Yadav, welcome you all in CBSE in-house training. My topic is teaching strategies for hearing impairment. First of all, what does the term hearing impairment means? Hearing impairment means a person facing hearing disability. A person facing hearing disability, and what are the remedies we can give to the person facing the hearing disabilities? First of all, let's define the term deafness or hearing disability. Deafness is a term used to cover the whole range of hearing loss. Hearing disability means Shravan Badit. The Royal National Institute for Deaf People in USA uses the term to cover people who are deaf, partially, hard of hearing, deaf, or experience tinnitus. The following information is a basic guideline for effective communication with people with a hearing loss. Deaf and hard of hearing people, they vary from one person to another. However, main communication is likely to be via listening, facial expression, lip reading. Lip reading means understanding the motions of speaking of a person's lip. Gesture means indication. Speech. Mime means language without speaking anything. BSL, British Sign Language, it has its own structure and syntax, and it is different from English, which may effectively be their second language. Means the language of sign and indication, writing, etc. But how can these things affect a student's work? In majority of the situations, deafness or hearing impairment, it affects a student's work up to a great extent. The biggest challenge, the biggest problem experienced by deaf students at Newcastle in hearing goes while in lectures or seminars. In many lectures, rooms are equipped with induction loops. Not all students find these things very effective. Deaf students or Shravan Badit Vidya will need more time to organize the language of their subjects, limited access to the spoken language around them, for organizing vocabulary and form of expression. Also, the auditory memory is likely to be less useful for them than for other students as an aid to study. Means they are not like normal students, they are not like common students, as we can give lecture to the common students. For hearing impaired, we will have to do something extra. We will have to facilitate their expression. And the lack of inner voice when reading can significantly affect reading fluency. For some, written expression may be affected by deafness. So how can teachers and teaching staff react towards them or facilitate them, help them in sorting out their problems? There are a number of strategies. Strategies means techniques which can be used by teaching staff, which will help him enormously, means up to a great extent. And there is an important role for teachers in educating other student members of seminar groups, so that simple techniques, tactics, methods outlined can be used by everyone. In order to effectively meet the communication need of a deaf student in the term of higher education, the following methods can be considered or it can be followed. Personal delivery. Personal delivery, it includes lip reading. Lip reading, it means understanding the expression of mouth while speaking up to a great concentration. 75% of it is guesswork, and for this reason clear speech and context is vital, is important for understanding. So what you have to do, you have to speak very clearly and at a reasonable pace. Means normal speed. Try to keep the rhythm of your speech natural as far as it is possible. If in doubt, ask the student if the pace means the tone of speaking or rhythm of speaking, it should be normal, neither too fast nor too slow. Visibility. To be able to lip read, the deaf students need to be able to see your face. When speaking, make sure that your mouth is not covered in any way and make it sure that you face the person to whom you are speaking to. Try to keep the beards and mustaches trimmed and do not cover your mouth with pens, cigarettes, coffee cups or hands while speaking. And don't nod your head too much, don't move your head too much or speak too much while writing on the board, while using the whiteboard or blackboard or walking around the room, as this creates a disturbance in lip reading situation. Ensure that the light is on your face and never from your behind express your thoughts. Facial contact. Try to maintain your eye contact. Try to maintain your eye contact. Means face-to-face contact should always be maintained. When talking to a deaf challenged Vidya, try to use expression in your face as well as gesture. Gesture means emotions to express, as this helps to convey the sense of your words to a lip reader. Make use of natural gesture and facial expression as a clue to meaning. Speak clearly. Speak clearly. Whatever you speak should be clearly audible, and your expression, by reading your facial expression or your lip expression, hearing impaired person can understand your thoughts or feelings, what you want to convey him or her. But avoid speaking artificially, slowly, or speaking too fast. Exaggerating your lips, use your natural pace, or shouting, as it affects the natural rhythm of the speech. Check comprehension, encourage and involve direct questioning. Position. What should be the position of a deaf challenged bhaiya or deaf challenged person? The deaf person should be seated in a proper seat. That is, he or she should know what is the best position for him. They should always sit in front of the teacher, slightly to one side of the speaker, and the minimum distance for lip reading is about 6 feet, 6 to 8 feet. Allow the students to position themselves so that he or she can lip read you easily and see the projector or board and as much of the class as possible if there is a group discussion. Distractions. Distraction means when your attention gets disturbed. Try to keep reflecting or bright jewelry to a minimum and wear simple clothes, plain clothes. Don't wear shining clothes, especially with checks, stripes or dots, which can confuse the student or his mind in understanding the things. Gaining attention. Be aware that you will need to attract the deaf person's attention before you start speaking to him or her. Firstly, try to get into their line of sight, and that is not effective. Consider touching the person. So touch the person, touch the bhaiya on his or her arm with care, bearing in mind it may be very useful to agree a signal with the student for when you are about to start. This could be a wave of your hand at the student, flashing the lights on and off, or if necessary, if it is important, asking the person's neighbor to tap a shoulder or arm to alert him or her. Equipment means what are the devices or aids bhaiya bahan can be given, so which helps them in understanding your thoughts, expression or ideas. Deaf or hearing impaired students in your lectures and supervisions may use one of the following devices: hearing aids, radio frequency system, cochlear implant. Many lecture theatres have been fitted with an induction loop which enables people using these hearing aids to have direct inputs from the lecture's microphone, thus removing the background noise. So there is no disturbance to the hearing disabled people. Please remember to turn on the microphone. None of these devices can really replace hearing, but natural hearing. But all these equipments can facilitate or benefit the students in some way or the other. Working with interpreters. Interpreters means one who will speak for that person, one who will do the job of bhaiya bahan, what they want to express. Interpreter. BSL. Sight users will need interpreters during lectures. Make sure that the interpreter is within hearing distance. Means interpreter should not be very far off, and you should be ready before you start speaking to interpret the thoughts of hearing impaired person or hearing impaired bhaiya bahan. Speak directly to the student and not to the interpreter. The interpreter always gets a little behind the speaker. So you must be conscious of this thing, be aware of this. You may have to pause, you may have to stop or speak slowly to ensure the interpreter is keeping pace with the hearing impaired person. If the interpreter is intensive, provides a rest break after every 15 to 20 minutes, then talk to him at an appropriate time because it is a very tiring work. It's not so easy. Presentation. Before starting a discussion or changing the subject, let the deaf personnel know the topic which you are going to discuss in the class. Try to include context whenever talking. Most lip reading is guesswork. Means you try to guess, you try to assume the thoughts. Lip reading or expression of the lips or mouth, it is much easier when the subject area is known. So always express the subject on which you are going to deliver to the students or Vidya with hearing disability, so that he or she does not face any problem in lip reading. Try to follow a logical structure for your session, as this makes lip reading easier to follow. If possible, let the student have a copy of your written notes before the lecture, as this will help with solving an argument. Pace. Pace means speed of speaking, slow or fast speed of speaking. Try to allow a little extra time for the deaf student to organize information and respond before going on to the next stage. Means they should be able to express whatever they understand the lecture delivered. Break up the sessions. Means give break in between, so that the deaf student is not lip reading for long periods of time. Contributions means help. What are the helps we can give? If you are speaking to a deaf person in a group, try to ensure that only one person at a time speaks, so that he or she can more easily follow the course of conversation or the course of speaking. Questions and contributions from elsewhere in the room, especially if they are from behind the student, it does not get heard. So repeat the question before his answering. Check comprehension, encourage and involve direct questioning. Now, use of visual aids. What are the visual aids which can be used? Ensure that students receive important information such as assignment details and changes in the class timetable. Remember that deaf or hearing impaired student may miss it if it is only advertised verbally. Verbally means in speaking. So back it up with an email or written notes for everyone. Means not only in speaking, but this work should be given in writing. Write out vital information such as changes of meeting time. Vital information means important information of meeting time or the place on the board or the overhead projector, to make sure that that person is not left out. Make use of visual materials like key vocabulary, diagram, written instructions, and then comes new vocabulary. Try to provide new vocabulary in advance. In advance means from before, or write it on the board. Unknown words are much impossible to read, and particularly for lip reading. Write important notes on the board to fix their form. Reading time. When using boards or flip charts, allow the students time to read what is written before starting to speak. Be aware that a deaf person cannot read or take notes at the same time as lip reading. Allow time for student to look at the relevant section and then make sure you have his or her attention towards you. Boards and flip charts. Try not to speak when writing on the board. Students cannot lip read back of your head. Then comes overhead projectors. These can be very helpful in facilitating the students with hearing disabilities. But remember that OHP can be noisy, which may be difficult for those with hearing aids. Slides. When using slides in a dark room, leave a curtain open or spotlight on the speaker or interpreter, or turn up the lights again before beginning the commentary. It is generally considered good practice to provide all students with a copy of slides or presentation, video and tapes. Try to use subtitled videos where possible, or obtain a transcript of the commentary. Alternatively, an interpreter may interpret the video. He may express or clear the video if the student uses VSL. But it will be useful if they have seen the video in advance or from before. Lectures. When prepared, handout provided in advance or from before, it allows reading time. It increases the amount that a deaf student gains from your lecture. Some deaf people who communicate in PSL may find written English more difficult, more hard to understand, as the two languages are quite very different. Therefore, printed materials may need to be in plain English to help or to assist deaf people to access these. Position. What should the position? Try to stay in the same place and not move around while you are talking, particularly to a deaf challenged student. Book lists. Make sure that you give the deaf student relevant book list. Relevant means required book list which you want to teach them well before the start of the course. A deaf student may rely more heavily on textbooks than lectures, and so easy availability is of great help. Seminars for deaf students or Shravan Badhit Bhaiya Bahan, group discussions are probably the most difficult situations to deal with. But there are ways of overcoming these problems. Size. The optimum size of a group, maximum size of a group for a deaf person is between 6 to 10 persons. Means it should not involve more than 6 to 10 persons. If a group is bigger than 6 to 10 persons, this is unlikely that people will be near enough to lip read and follow. Contribution to discussion becomes very tough or complicated. Sitting, arrange the room so that students can see everything, everyone, by putting chair in a circle or horseshoe shape. This allows the deaf student to locate the speaker more quickly. Make sure that no one is silhouetted against the light. Now, chairing. Allow the deaf student to take his or her share in chairing the discussion. Chairing means leading the discussion. When someone else is chairing, make sure that this person controls the discussion, encourages mumblers to speak up and prevents unnecessary interruption when people are speaking. Just don't disturb in between when they are speaking. Equipment. If the student is using a radio, microphone or loop system, remember that all contributors to the discussion will need to speak into the microphone. So you must ensure that this is known to group before discussion starts. So you must make it very sure that members of the group raise their hand before speaking. Make their hands raised so that deaf student is alert. So they get alert to a change of speaker. Do not come up more than one person at a time. Only one person at a time should be allowed, so that everything is clearly understood. Practicals, lab and studio work. A variety of different situations can arise in practical sessions. Examples: do not stand behind the student when he or she is working. Remember also that student cannot watch the work and lip read you at the same time. When teaching points arise during the session as a result of supervision, the work of other students, remember to attract the deaf students' attention before you speak. Make sure that the challenged person can see clearly. They should be able to watch you clearly, what you are speaking, what you are saying, and what you are doing while giving a demonstration or while giving a lecture. Field work and placements. Special provision may have to be made for students on field trips or placements. A student who copes well. Who copes well means who deals well, who faces well the lip reading or the emotions of the mouth when you speak in a lecture. Theatre may be quite unable to manage without further support. When on a windy beach or in a noisy factory. Be flexible means be easy and talk through the possible options and solutions, remedies with the student well in advance to avoid the problems, to clear the doubts and problems. Timetabling, arranging the timetable, and when required, rearrange it slightly so that it can make an enormous difference. Means great difference for a deaf student. Examples are given below. Lectures, try not to fill an entire day with contact teaching. Means lip reading is very tiring process, and a few hours every day is best. Only 1 to 2 hours is best option. Tutorials means teaching practice. If a student uses an interpreter or communicator, remember that this needs to be taken into account the timing of tutorials. Choice of room. This can be very important in maximizing the amount which a deaf student can understand from a session. Gain means the knowledge which they are able to get. Students will generally already have their personal hearing aid system if appropriate to their needs, the following outlines of how these and other technical aids work in each situation. Teaching staff should note that these systems will not work where students have insufficient, means lack of hearing to use a hearing aid. Lighting. Arrangement of lights. Choose a room with good lighting system where light will be concentrated on the speaker's face. Means sufficient lighting system should be there. So visibility will be clear. Rooms with windows. Rooms with windows directly behind the speaker are not good as they leave the speaker a signal. Then comes background noise. Choose a quiet room without background noise from traffic, which makes it difficult to hear for the hearing impaired. If students are divided into groups for a session, try not to put more than one group in a room, as the discussion of another group can make it difficult to make it clear or make it understand what is being said hereby. Amplification systems. Amplification system means sound system. Check that the room is suitable for any technical equipment which is used. Can the amplification system or the sound system already installed be used in conjunction with the portable loop or with the radio microphone system? Now about radio microphone system. The radio microphone system consists of a microphone given to the lecturer which transmits to a receiver which is worn by the student. A radio microphone, it does not amplify your voice, it does not increase your voice, but it transmits radio signals directly to the user's hearing aids. It helps to remove problem of distance and background noise, and so it is good for lecturers and for seminars. The hearing aid, user will only be able to hear what the microphone user is saying. They will not be able to hear anyone else. So the message is conveyed very clearly to the hearing impaired person. In a seminar situation, the deaf person will either place the microphone in the center of the table to pick up the individual contribution, or if the microphone is not working, it will have to be passed around to whoever. Portable systems are also available which can be moved from room to room. Portable means which can be carried from one room to the another room. And the facilities in teaching rooms, we can see decoration. What should the facilities in the teaching room? Decoration means try not to choose a room with bright or distracting wallpaper. Distracting means which disturbs the attention of the student, or pinboard behind the speaker. It makes difficult to concentrate on the speaker. If necessary, use a screen behind the speaker. Digital recorders. Digital recorders can be used by students with a great amount of residual hearing, and it is very useful for keeping a record of lectures to be listened at the leisure, later on afterwards, and stored on their computer if they wish to listen it. So what is the advantage? The advantage of recording or recap is that any word or sentence which are at first difficult to understand, it can be replayed again and again, several times, possibly using a neck loop and hearing aid or a set of lightweight headphones. So the thing can be understood clearly later on, which was unable to understand at first. It can be cleared later on. Human support. Human support means help of your help. Help of a normal person. How can you facilitate his hearing? A deaf or hearing impaired student may use a note taker, scribe, or computer operator to write in lectures or social events. This may be required in addition to an interpreter. About note takers, it is quite impossible to lip read a speaker or follow an interpreter while at the same time taking notes. Using a note taker may be the only way the deaf student has to obtain a permanent record of the lecture. So, note takers, what should they do? They should jot down important points. They should note down important points, dates and references they receive in depth of training, and will follow the instruction of the deaf student about what should be included or what should be left. Note takers in university are employed by the external agency also. Lip speakers. Lip speaker device. It is useful for those who do not use sign language, but who find a teacher or lecturer difficult to lip read. A lip speaker repeats the word of the speaker. Lip speaker, it repeats the word of the speaker without voice. They produce clearly the shape of words, the flow of rhythm, and natural speech. And it repeats the stress used by the speaker. The lip speaker, it also uses facial expressions, natural gestures, and finger spelling to aid the lip reader's understanding. Lip speakers are used by the people who use lip reading up to a great extent and who have good command of the English language. Interpreters, by whom interpreters are used? It is used by students who prefer to communicate through BSL, British Sign of Language, or supported English. A deaf person will use British Sign Language, BSL, as their first language. BSL means British Sign Language. This is a language with its own grammar, which is different from English grammar. And individual may have some difficulties in communicating effectively in written English, in written language, but may be very good communicator in British Sign Language, BSL, British Sign Language. Some hearing impaired students also use Sign Support English, SSE, Sign Support English, rather than BSL, British Sign Language. SSE is not a language in its own right, but more a kind of English with signs. SSE means Support English. If a deaf person is helped or gets help of an interpreter, he should speak directly to the deaf person or the deaf bhaiya bahan. So who facilitates the job of bhaiya bahan? This special educator. Special educator facilitates the hearing, or it is very helpful to employ an interpreter who has some knowledge of the subject matter, especially if the vocabulary is tough or highly specialized. And interpreters, they should be qualified minimum up to a level of 3 certificate in BSL, British Sign Language. So what are the important strategies, important techniques which can be used to ensure effective and productive learning environment? It is accessible education. Accessible education, it is the process of designing course and developing teaching style to meet the needs of people who have a variety of backgrounds, abilities and learning styles. So there is no single way to teach. You can use any method, any pattern, any style which you find that it is more effective or it is more understandable. People learn in a variety of ways. Different people have different learning styles. So different methodologies have to be used by the teacher using different instructional methods which help the needs of the great number of listeners. What does it mean if someone is deafened or hard of hearing? People who have hearing loss may be deaf, may be deafened or hard of hearing. Chaman. The Canadian Hearing Society, it has used the following definitions. Deaf means definition of deaf. Who can be called as a deaf? So deaf is a term which refers to a member of socio-linguistic and cultural group whose first language is not normal language like Hindi or English, but it is a sign language. In Canada, there are two main sign languages. American Sign Language, ASL, like in Britain, DSL, and language sinus cubicoids, LSQ. Language sinus cubicoids, LSQ. Deafened, late deafened, and oral deaf. Oral deaf means lower case of deaf. These are the terms which tells us about the individuals who have lost all hearing at some point in their life. They use spoken language and rely on visual form of the communication. Communication is speaking, such as speech reading, text means writing, and occasionally sign language. And what is hard of hearing? It is a term which refers to individuals who have hearing loss from mild to severe extent, and who use their voice and residual hearing, and occasionally sign language for communication. So some individuals with hearing loss, they may use assistive technology to communicate, such as hearing aids or cochlear implants, while others, they can use interpretive services, means interpreters or lip readers. So when the student is accompanied or helped by the interpreter, while communicating, watch the student. While you are communicating, while you are talking or giving the lecture, you should talk to the student, but you are talking to the student, but you should listen to the interpreter when he or she is interpreting or expressing what the student is saying. Speak to the student and not to the interpreter. So with whom you have to speak? You have to speak to the student and not to the interpreter. You should allow the interpreter to sit or stand near you so the student can watch you and read your words at the same time as he or she watches the interpreter. If you have the need to meet the student during office hours or outside in class time, the office for students with disabilities should arrange for an interpreter. Adequate advance notice is required for arrangements to be made. Meet both the student and the interpreter to discuss possible measures which can be taken for the classroom. You can take short breaks in between to allow the interpreter to catch up with you. Also plan a 10 minutes break after every 50 minutes or 1 hour of session. Interpretation or expression, it requires a great deal of concentration and endurance. Endurance means patience. Keep in mind that only one speaker can be interpreted. Interpreted means can be expressed at a time during a group project or a panel presentation. So speakers should be encouraged to speak only one at a time. Only one at a time. So that ideas can be understood very clearly. You must be conscious, you must be aware that interpreters should be bound by their professional code of ethics, means moral values, to interpret all spoken messages while in the presence of the students, including the informal chatting as well. When video material is not closed captioned, provide enough light to allow the student to see the interpreter. The interpreter also needs to position near the viewing. Interpreter should be positioned near the viewing screen so that the student can see the interpreter and the video at the same time. So you must be very aware that the interpreters work in pairs with each interpreting 20 to 30 minutes of segments. This is because of the need for a high degree of concentration and because of the physical demands of the work. So don't be concerned with the initial distraction. Distraction means when your attention gets disturbed. So that the interpreter hand movement, it may cause for the rest of the class. It shows that people quickly become used to. People slowly and steadily they become used to the interpreter's presence. So you must advise the office for students with disabilities if you are planning to cancel a class or change the location, such as taking a field trip. Interpreters are hired on an hourly basis. Means they are paid in hour basis, on hour basis. So advance notice of changes help. It helps to reduce cost and allows for better use of interpreters' skills and expertise. So, what are the suggestions for interacting on one-on-one with a student who is deafened or hard of hearing or stubborn? Patience, respect, and willingness to find a way to communicate are your best and effective tools. Attract the person's attention when you are speaking. This can be done gently by touching the person on the shoulder, by waving your hand as well. Look at and speak directly to the person, not his or her interpreter. Speak as you would normally do. So normal course of speaking should take place. Make sure that you are in a well-lit area where the person can see your face directly. When speaking to a person who is deaf, do not put your hands in front of your face. Your face should always be visible and very clear. Be patient, be calm, be cool, be relaxed. If the person's first language is a visual language, ASL, American Sign Language, or language sinus cubicoids, LSQ, language sinus cubicoids, LSQ, communication, it may take longer or be approached slightly differently than you are supporting. Remember, the person is actually communicating in the second or the third language. So you should try to hold your conversation speaking in a quiet area. Background noise, it is quite disturbing, distracting for persons who are facing hearing challenges or who are hard of hearing. If you are not sure what to do, ask, can I help you? How can I help you? So you must help a student, accommodate a student who is deafened or hard of hearing. As an educator, as a special educator, you have a great responsibility on your shoulders to facilitate the students with hearing disabilities, hearing impairment under the Ontario Human Rights Code of USA. Requests for accommodation are made on an individual basis by students through the Office for Students with Disabilities and require medical or formal documentation, means legal work. The following are common academic accommodations which is required for students who are deaf or hearing impaired. This list is not to replace the official request for academic accommodation for students with disabilities. So what should be done in the classroom or laboratory? Many persons with disabilities about being frustrated with people, they assume what they can or cannot do. So remember that although persons with disabilities have specific needs, they have special needs, but every individual is quite different from one another. So what should be done before starting the course? Choose course materials early. This allows enough time for you to convert the documents into formats, or for students to request the format which they really need. Consider supporting your oral presentation with visual aids such as table, graphs, overhead slides, PowerPoint, presentation and caption films or the videos. So you will also have to consider whether the learning platforms or technologies you plan to use are accessible. They are easily available, they are easily in reach to all your students, to all your Vidya. For example, if you plan to show video or use audio clips, determine whether the information is essential, whether the information is very important for your students' understanding of the content, or if alternative material is required to them, such as transcripts or captions. So, when the course begins, what you should do? You should encourage the students to tell you about any accessibility concern. So, you can do this verbally. Verbally means in speaking. Early in the semester, by including accessibility statement on your syllabus. Indicate that these conversations or this speaking should be confidential and secret, and it should be strictly for learning needs or accommodating the student. So what you have to do? So let us watch a video related to this topic, teaching studies for children with hearing impairment.
Even a mild hearing loss can have a major impact on all aspects of a child's development. Did you know that at least one child in your class probably has a mild hearing loss? A child with a mild hearing loss can miss up to 50% of what's being said in the classroom. Less than half of children with a mild hearing loss get 5 good GCSEs. The good news is there are some simple things you can do to make a real difference. This short film will give you an idea of what it's like to be a child with a mild hearing loss and top tips on what you can do to help.
This guy bought some fizzy drink, and then he went to the
Close doors and windows and turn off any unused electrical equipment.
And when he came back from the loo, he opened it and it sprayed everywhere, even on the lights. You can see that it's a landlocked country, which means that it doesn't have a coastline, but you can see some water and they are lakes. Make sure the classroom is well lit and that I can see your face clearly so I can lift read. It's the pants. Get 3! Aiden? Aiden! I've called your name 3 times. Get my attention before talking to me. Aiden? Would you like to come and solve this one for me? Sit 4! So you've done the planning, and we've put in our introductions. Are we keeping you awake? And make sure I have breaks so I don't get too tired. Now, 5-minute break. Tip 5! Now we're going to write our conclusions.
There is lots of technology available, such as sound-filled systems, which project your voice across the classroom.
And now you've got to make sure that you've got conclusions.
For more information on how to support pupils with a mild hearing loss, contact a teacher of the deaf from your local authority, visit our website, or contact our free phone helpline. We also have a range of resources for mainstream teachers that you may find useful, supporting the achievement of deaf children, creating good listening conditions for learning and education, and our popular Look, Smile, Chat Deaf Awareness Pack. Even a mild hearing loss can have a major impact on all aspects of a child's development. Did you know that at least one child in your class probably has a mild hearing loss? A child with a mild hearing loss can miss up to 50% of what's being said in the classroom. Less than half of children with a mild hearing loss get 5 good GCSEs. The good news is there are some simple things you can do to make a real difference. This short film will give you an idea of what it's like to be a child with a mild hearing loss and top tips on what you can do to help.
This guy bought some fizzy drink, and then he went to the living room.
Close doors and windows and turn off any unused electrical equipment.
Imagine sitting in a classroom and not being able to hear what the teacher is saying. No matter how hard you try to listen, you just can't seem to understand the words that your teacher is speaking. As if this wouldn't be bad enough, now imagine that you're going to be tested over this information. How can you be expected to do well on the test if you couldn't even hear the lecture? This is a challenge faced by many deaf and hard of hearing students in our schools. The Individuals with Disabilities Act promises students with disabilities a free, appropriate public education with an individualized education plan. Unfortunately, not all deaf and hard of hearing students are receiving an appropriate education. Due to poor communication and lack of accommodations, many deaf and hard of hearing students are denied equal access to information. But what causes deaf and hard of hearing students to be denied this access to information? First, deaf and hard of hearing students are not able to overhear information. They can only hear information that is directly given to them. This means that if a teacher is speaking to a student one-on-one, hearing children will be able to overhear the information being given in that conversation. Deaf and hard of hearing children will not be able to hear that information and may not even be aware that the conversation is happening. This is called incidental learning. Due to an inability to incidentally learn, deaf and hard of hearing children can miss up to 90% of information that is provided for other children. How can teachers prevent deaf and hard of hearing students from missing this information? There are several recommendations that can be made to reduce the effects of this issue. It is common for teachers to turn around and write on the board while speaking to their students. This behavior might be okay in most classrooms, but in a classroom with a deaf or hard of hearing student, this teacher habit could cause a deaf or hard of hearing student to miss a lot of information. Turning your back to a deaf or hard of hearing student directs the sound away from them and takes away their ability to read your lips. It's also helpful to repeat student answers and to take turns during group discussions to make sure that the deaf or hard of hearing student is able to hear everything that is happening in the classroom. Some of you might be thinking, well, if the student has hearing aids or cochlear implants, then they're just like hearing students and they don't need accommodations, right? No, that is a big misconception. Sound that is processed through a hearing aid or cochlear implant is not the same as a sound that is heard directly through the ear.
The BBC would like to announce that the next scene is not considered suitable for family viewing. It contains scenes of violence involving people's heads and arms getting chopped off.
Since the sound that a deaf or hard of hearing student hears is different than what we hear, these students need processing time. An article titled "In Servicing the Classroom Teacher" describes this issue. Any speech further away will likely be heard, like putting a puzzle together with missing pieces. Deaf and hard of hearing children need extra time to find these missing pieces. A classroom teacher is not providing equal access to information if they do not give deaf and hard of hearing students processing time. Teachers can speak at a normal pace.
So important strategies to be followed. You should make sure the student can see the instructor or interpreter while using the whiteboard or screen at all times. Before talking to the students, be certain that they should have your attention. Thank you very much.